When World War I began in 1914, no one could have imagined how important airplanes would become. At the start, planes were seen as tools for watching enemy movements, not for fighting. These small, fragile machines were made of wood, cloth, and wire, and they could barely stay in the air for long. Pilots would sometimes wave at enemy flyers rather than attack them, but as the war grew more brutal, nations quickly realized that controlling the skies could mean victory on the ground. What started as simple observation flights soon turned into deadly battles in the clouds. Airplanes were fitted with guns, bombs, and cameras, and young men were sent into the sky with little training and almost no chance of survival. These early days of air warfare changed the world forever, creating a new kind of soldier, one who fought not in trenches, but in the cold, thin air above them. The planes used in World War I were incredibly dangerous, not just to the enemy, but also to the pilots flying them. Most aircraft were built from light materials like wood and canvas, making them fast but extremely fragile. Engines often failed mid-air, and a single bullet could cause a plane to burst into flames. There were no parachutes in the early years of the war, meaning if your plane caught fire, you had two options: burn alive or jump to your death. Pilots flew open cockpits, exposed to freezing winds and gunfire. Every flight was a gamble with death, and even the best pilots didn't expect to survive long. Many flyers joked that their life expectancy after joining an air squadron was only a few weeks. Despite this, thousands volunteered to fly, drawn by the promise of adventure, glory, and escape from the muddy trenches below. They became the knights of the sky, fighting deadly duels above the battlefield. The term dogfight became famous during World War I, describing the terrifying aerial battles between fighter pilots. These fights were fast, chaotic, and extremely personal. Pilots would chase each other in circles, twisting and diving through the clouds while trying to get behind their opponent for a perfect shot. One wrong move, a stall, a jammed gun, or a sudden gust of wind, could send a plane spiraling into the ground. Machine guns were synchronized to fire through the propeller without hitting the blades, a revolutionary but risky technology. The sound of bullets ripping through fabric wings was common, and explosions often filled the sky. In those few tense seconds of combat, victory and death were separated by inches. Many pilots described the sensation as both thrilling and horrifying, a deadly dance where courage and fear existed together in every heartbeat. Among the chaos of war, certain pilots became famous for their incredible skill and deadly accuracy. The most well-known was the German ace Manfred von Richthofen, better known as the Red Baron. He painted his plane bright red so that everyone would recognize him, a bold move that turned him into both a hero and a target. The Red Baron shot down over 80 enemy aircraft before he was finally killed in 1918. On the Allied side, pilots like Eddie Rickenbacker from the United States and Albert Ball from Britain became symbols of bravery. But behind their fame was constant fear and exhaustion. Every mission could be their last. They faced freezing temperatures, faulty engines, and overwhelming odds. For every ace who survived, hundreds of nameless pilots were shot down. Their bodies never recovered from the fields below. These flying heroes were both admired and pitied, because everyone knew their glory came with a terrible price. While many saw fighter pilots as fearless and glamorous, the reality was far darker. The stress of flying constant missions, watching friends die, and living with the knowledge that death could come at any moment destroyed many young men mentally. They suffered nightmares, breakdowns, and what doctors at the time called shell shock, now known as post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. Some pilots became addicted to alcohol or drugs to calm their nerves before missions. Others lost touch with reality after seeing too many horrific deaths in the air. Even when they returned home, many could never escape the memories of burning planes, falling bodies, and the screams of their comrades over the radio. The mental scars of aerial combat were deep and lasting, and society often failed to understand the trauma these men carried for the rest of their lives. The ways pilots died in World War I were some of the most horrifying in all of warfare. Planes could explode in mid-air, break apart from stress, or catch fire from a single bullet hitting the fuel tank. Without parachutes, a pilot's fate was sealed the moment his plane was hit. Witnesses often saw burning aircraft falling from the sky like flaming comets, the pilot still inside. Some chose to jump rather than burn, their bodies tumbling to the ground miles below. Others survived crashes only to die from terrible injuries later. The sight of a friend's plane going down was one of the most painful experiences for a pilot, knowing there was nothing they could do to help. These deaths were not quick or clean. They were brutal, lonely, and terrifying. And yet, new pilots kept coming, replacing those who were lost, each hoping they might somehow survive where others had not. Despite the horror, World War I also saw rapid innovation in aviation. Each year of the war brought faster, stronger, and deadlier planes. Engineers developed synchronized guns, stronger engines, and lightweight bombs. Nations raced to create the best aircraft, leading to famous models like the Sopwith Camel, Fokker WWI, and Spad-13. Aerial photography also became a powerful tool, giving armies valuable information about enemy movements. But these advances came with a cost. As planes improved, so did the weapons used to destroy them. The sky turned into a battlefield where machines evolved faster than the humans flying them. Many historians believe that the technology of modern air warfare, including bombers, fighters, and reconnaissance planes, was born in this brutal period. It was a time of both incredible progress and unimaginable suffering, as innovation and death advanced hand in hand. While fighter aces became famous, most World War I pilots were ordinary men who never got recognition. Many flew dangerous missions over enemy lines to drop bombs or take photographs, often without any weapons to defend themselves. These unarmed flyers faced anti-aircraft fire, enemy fighters, and bad weather every day. Hundreds vanished without a trace, their bodies never found. Mechanics, too, risked their lives repairing damaged aircraft under constant threat of bombing. Ground crews worked tirelessly to keep planes flying, even when resources were scarce and the conditions terrible. Without them, the heroes in the air could not have flown at all. These forgotten men played a huge part in shaping the future of aviation. Even though their names never appeared in newspapers or history books, their courage and sacrifice deserve to be remembered alongside the famous aces. By the end of World War I in 1918, the face of warfare had changed forever. Air combat had grown from a simple idea into a major part of military strategy. Thousands of planes filled the skies, and air superiority became essential for victory. But the cost was enormous. More than 50,000 airmen died during the war. The survivors returned home as heroes, but also as haunted men. The technology they helped create would soon lead to even deadlier conflicts in the future, especially World War II. The bravery and suffering of these early pilots laid the foundation for modern aviation, but they also showed how quickly human creativity could be turned into instruments of destruction. The war to end all wars became the war that taught humanity just how terrible the skies could be. Today, over a century later, the stories of World War I pilots still capture the imagination. Their courage, innovation, and sacrifice shaped the world we live in. Every time we see a jet fighter soar through the sky, we are witnessing the legacy of those fragile biplanes and the men who dared to fly them. Museums and documentaries keep their memory alive, reminding us that progress often comes at a terrible cost. The pilots of World War I faced fear, fire, and death every time they took off, and many never came back. Yet, their bravery inspired future generations to dream of flying, to explore the sky not as a battlefield, but as a space for discovery and hope. Their story is both a warning and a tribute, a reminder that the beauty of flight was born in the shadow of unimaginable horror. The term ace was born during World War I to describe pilots who achieved 5 or more aerial victories. At first, it was a simple military label, but soon it became a badge of honor, a mark of fame and pride. Newspapers began publishing stories about these daring men who ruled the skies. They were portrayed as heroes, even celebrities, despite the grim reality of their missions. Pilots like René Fonck of France, Edward Mick Manick and Billy Bishop of Britain, and Ernst Udet of Germany became household names. Their duels in the air were followed like sporting events, and their victories were celebrated across nations desperate for good news. But behind the public image of glory, aces carried immense psychological pressure. Every time they took off, they knew that one mistake could end their legend in an instant. Rivalries developed not just between nations, but also among pilots in the same squadrons, each desperate to prove himself the best. Some became consumed by obsession, counting kills as if they were points in a deadly game, while others quietly hated the fame that came with so much death. The rise of the ace gave the world heroes, but also exposed the deep human cost of turning war into spectacle. Life inside a World War I air squadron was a strange mixture of excitement, fear, and brotherhood. Pilots lived close together, sharing meals, jokes, and letters from home. Each day, they watched friends take off for missions, and sometimes never return. Many squadrons developed tight bonds, like families formed under pressure. These young men relied on one another not only for support, but also for survival. The airfields were rough, often made of dirt or grass, and planes were constantly being repaired after each flight. Mechanics worked tirelessly, patching bullet holes and replacing engines that could fail at any moment. Between missions, pilots tried to relax, playing cards, drinking, or writing letters. But the tension was always there. Every evening brought empty chairs in the mess hall, silent reminders of the cost of war. In the morning, the survivors climbed back into their fragile aircraft, knowing full well that their luck might end that day. This combination of camaraderie and dread defined life in the air service, a unique kind of bravery born not from confidence, but from the acceptance of constant danger. While men dominated the skies, many women played crucial roles behind the scenes. They worked in factories building aircraft, stitching canvas, fitting engines, and painting insignias. Some served as nurses, treating injured pilots who returned from missions. These women endured long hours, poor conditions, and the emotional weight of knowing that the planes they built might soon be destroyed in battle. A few even became pilots themselves, though they were not allowed to fight. In Russia, for example, the famous night witches would later become legendary in World War II, but their inspiration came from early female aviators who proved that courage was not limited by gender. During World War I, women's efforts kept the air war alive. Their skill and resilience on the ground were as vital as any pilot's courage in the air. Yet history often forgot their names. The bravery of these women reminds us that war's impact spreads far beyond the battlefield, touching everyone who works, waits, and prays for those who never return. Amid all the tragedy, there were also incredible tales of survival that seemed almost impossible. One of the most famous cases was that of William Barker, a Canadian pilot who fought alone against 15 German aircraft in 1918. Despite being shot multiple times and having his plane riddled with bullets, he managed to down several enemies and crash land safely behind his own lines. His bravery earned him the Victoria Cross, but it came at a great cost. He was permanently injured and haunted by what he'd seen. Another story tells of Roland Garros, a French pilot who became the first to mount a machine gun on a plane that fired through the propeller. When his plane was shot down and he was captured, the Germans studied his invention and improved it, changing the entire course of air warfare. There were also pilots who fell from the sky and survived by miracle, landing in trees, rivers, or even enemy territory where they were captured but lived to tell their stories. These moments of survival stood out as rare sparks of hope in a war that offered little mercy. As the war dragged on, the purpose of aircraft expanded. No longer just for scouting or dogfighting, planes were now used for bombing missions. The early bombers were large, slow, and made easy targets for enemy fighters. Yet their impact on the ground was terrifying. Cities like London and Paris were attacked from the air for the first time, introducing civilians to a new kind of fear: death from above. The German Zeppelins, massive airships that floated silently, at night, dropped bombs that killed hundreds and spread panic. Anti-aircraft guns fired desperately into the dark skies, while searchlights scanned for the invisible enemy. These raids marked the beginning of a new era, total war, where no one, not even civilians, was safe. For the pilots of bombers, the missions were equally terrifying. They flew long distances through freezing winds, often without oxygen, while enemy fighters hunted them mercilessly. Bombing was not just an act of destruction. It was a psychological weapon that changed how people viewed war forever. One of the most haunting realities of WWI air combat was the strange respect many pilots developed for their enemies. Unlike soldiers in the trenches, who rarely saw the faces of those they killed, airmen often came within yards of their opponents. They could see expressions, gestures, even the fear in their eyes. Some pilots described feeling connected to the men they fought as if they shared a tragic brotherhood in the sky. There are recorded instances of enemy pilots saluting each other before or after battles. Brief moments of humanity amid chaos. When a famous ace was shot down, both sides often sent wreaths or flowers in tribute. This eerie bond between enemies showed that even in war's darkest hours, a small piece of respect and empathy could survive. Yet, it also deepened the emotional wounds. Killing someone you could almost touch was a psychological burden many carried for the rest of their lives. The death of the Red Baron in April 1918 marked the symbolic end of the romantic age of air combat. Manfred von Richthofen, who had once ruled the skies with unmatched skill, was shot down after chasing an enemy plane too far behind Allied lines. His bright red Fokker triplane crashed in a field, and soldiers from both sides rushed to the wreckage. The news spread instantly. Even his enemies mourned his death. The British buried him with full military honors, placing a